Okay, I'd say we get started so we are respectful of everyone's time. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to introduce Crystal Stokes. She's the founder of Full Circle Labs. It's a veterinary consulting firm that focuses on supporting the wellness and performance of your teams during growth and challenges, which I think we all want growth and we all have challenges, right? So it fits all of our needs. She also hosts the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership podcast. So if you're not tuning into that, you definitely should be. Originally, Crystal was on track to be a veterinarian before she realized she could better help people that help the pets. So she switched gears. She earned her master's in counseling psychology, as well as leadership and performance certificates from Harvard and Cornell. So it sounds super fancy to me. I personally love talking and listening to Crystal, and I'm sure you will as well. So she wants us to be interactive. Feel free to ask questions as they come up, and I think we are ready to get started.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen then. And before I kick it off, yes, as Megan said, thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate your warm words, and we always have a great time catching up. So for this webinar today, the thing I hate most is when I fall asleep delivering my own webinar. So to prevent that from happening, I would love to have you all just contribute, speak up. The point of this is for you all to really walk away with things that are actionable that you can take away. So many webinars we listen to, it's in one ear, out the other, we're back to our busy lives. I want this to be something that you take at least one thing away that you can implement in your clinic or take to your leadership team and develop further. So the best way to learn is actually being engaged with the content. So feel free, interrupt me anytime if you have a question or like an anecdote you want to share about what you've experienced. I think the more that you all can collaborate with each other too, we're just stronger with more numbers talking about this topic of retention. So is it thumbs up? You guys are up for yes, contributing to this. Fabulous. And all the people with their screens off, I know in the background, they're like, yeah, holding their cat. Okay. So let's go ahead and see. Hopefully, can you all see that? Yep. Look at my hair in that picture. That never happens unless I have a fan going, right? Fabulous. So our topic today is turnover and retention and what really makes team members stay. So just to go through our agenda quickly, tell you a little bit about Full Circle Lab and myself so you know who this Yahoo is in front of you that's talking about retention. We're going to introduce the topic. We're going to highlight some of the current industry data. We're going to explore how to collect and deepen your own turnover data and why that's important. We're also going to identify and avoid common traps when addressing turnover. Sorry, there's a little lag on my computer. We're going to discuss elements of action planning. Now I'm going to give you all a QR code at the end of this that provides a checklist of a lot of what we talk about. So don't worry about trying to remember everything or take down notes. It'll all be there in just a checklist that you can go through, like a cheat sheet. And then our learning objectives, I'll just post those down there briefly. Those are for the race approval. So this is a race approved webinar today. So those learning objectives are just part of that race approval process, just so you have that top of mind. Oh, this delay is hard. I'm sorry. There we go. So I want to give you all a little bit of my backstory because this topic of retention is actually very, very personal. I was a wannabe veterinarian since I was a very young child. I went to NC State University with plans on going to their vet school. I started right away working in veterinary medicine in a GP clinic for 2 years. Loved it. Did a little bit of exotics work and wildlife work as well. And then finally shifted into overnight ER in about my third to fourth year of school. And I was really stoked about overnight ER because I thought, I'm going to learn anesthesia. You get a lot more hands-on critical care experience, just a whole nother world. And all that stuff was true. I really enjoyed many aspects of overnight ER, but what I did not expect was how much economic euthanasia I would encounter. And I worked in a clinic where we just didn't talk about it. There was zero processing around what this meant. We really didn't have any policies either. It was just, if the client can't afford it and they elect to euthanize, that's it. We didn't try to find other pathways. We didn't have care credit, nothing. So we euthanized a tremendous number of animals. And after about a year of that, I remember one night, it was this gray cat that had come in. It had a broken leg, and I think it was maybe $2,000 or something in total for like hospitalization and surgery. And they couldn't afford it. And it was like $70 to euthanize. And that night, I just felt something like break inside of me because I was like fantasizing about stealing the cat and jumping in my car and driving away. Something had shifted for me. And I left that night saying to myself, you know what? You don't have what it takes to be a veterinarian. And that was the end of my career in veterinary medicine. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't look for help. I didn't even question my own thinking, which was really flawed. I just basically had a quarter life crisis, which is ultimately what led me to therapy. So I tried going to med school. It was not the fit for me. I thought about physical therapy school. I was just floundering. Like there was nothing I really wanted to do. And I went to therapy out of desperation because nothing else had worked, but I didn't really believe in therapy. I thought it was honestly bullshit. And going to therapy, though, it was revolutionary for me. I always say it's like I went from Pinocchio, like this wooden object, to being a real boy, like flesh and blood and heart. And it reconnected me with this much deeper sense of like why we exist and what matters in life. And it was so transformative that I remember saying to my therapist, Deborah, I know what I want to be when I grow up. She was like, what's that, Crystal? I said, a therapist. And she's like, what? And that's what led me to California. So I came out to Palo Alto for grad school, and it was wonderful. So I shifted into working part in therapy and then also in leadership coaching and development, because I found that my strengths are actually better when it comes to teams and corporations. I like working with groups where you can have a trickle down effect. Like the one-on-one of therapy wasn't as fulfilling to me. So I found myself in organizations like Google and Facebook and loved it. But veterinary medicine always haunted me. It's like that lover you can't forget about. So it was probably about going on 10 years now. I emailed a veterinarian here in Santa Barbara with a very weird request. I said, hey, I'd love to be back in the clinic a bit. I can spare 5 hours a week. Are you looking for a volunteer technician? I'm really rusty, but I'm sure I could figure it out. And she emailed me and said, oh, well, come on in. We'd love to meet you. She brought me to her office and sat me down and told me my email was very strange. She said, nobody wants to be a volunteer technician. She said, I looked you up on LinkedIn. I noticed you're a therapist. I said, that's right. She said, did you know that we just had a doctor die by suicide here? And I was speechless. I said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. And she said, our team is really struggling and we could use someone like you. Do you want a job? And that's very personal because I think I could have been that person in my 20s. Like it was so hard to leave the industry. And that's the thing about retention is we're either leaving the industry or leaving life. And that's why I named my company Full Circle Lab, that we start at the top of the circle, full of passion and hope for this industry. And then something often brings us down to the bottom of that circle. It can be a variety of things. We leave life, we leave the industry. I want to prevent that. The whole mission of our company is to keep you from the bottom of the circle, keep you close to the top of the circle. So that company I still work with to this day. They were my origin story here in Santa Barbara. I'm there 2 days a week, just part of the team. And that was the genesis of Full Circle Lab. So now we're a team of 7 people, mixture of therapists like me, social workers, and DVMs who are certified coaches. We come into hospitals, we provide leadership development and really work on boosting retention. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you today is our experience of boots on the ground in all different kinds of hospitals, corporate settings, all the way down to my favorite mom and pops that are like grassroots bootstrapping it. So I want to hear from you all now. Where are you calling in from? And what is the size and type of your hospital? I'm going to take us off screen share just so I can see everybody. Yeah.
I'll go. My name's Steve. We're Sierra Veterinary Hospital. We're in Carson City, Nevada. We have 3 doctors and a staff of 27. We're a company that's been around for 51 years, and we were recently bought by a young new entrepreneur veterinarian, and we're in the process of finding our way. It's been a couple years, so we're getting there, but it's fun to have a big client base for 51 years and to be starting a brand new project. So that's kind of where we're at Sierra Veterinary Hospital. My name's Steve.
Whoa, that's like a whole new chapter. Congratulations. Wow. All right, who wants to go next? Chris. Oh no, Chris, we can't hear you. Huh, no, it says that you're unmuted though. Darn, do you want to put it in the chat? Put it in the chat and then I'll read it for you. All right, who else? How about Kathleen, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Kathleen. I am in the Mid-Hudson Valley of New York. I own Roundup Valley Veterinary Associates. I bought the practice a little over a year ago now. It had existed for about 25 years before I purchased it. We are a 2-doctor practice with 16-ish support staff.
Very cool. Awesome. I see we have a couple here with Susan too. Do you want to go? Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Susan. We're from Mattapoisett, Massachusetts. We just recently purchased the practice from another veterinarian who refused to go corporate. So both of our associate veterinarians bought the practice together. So, and that was exactly about a year ago. So we're trying to improve and make things, it was a mom and pop's place, and now we're trying to make things better.
Wow, that's awesome. And then, oh, so Emily just popped one in. Let's say Emily is with Animal Medical Professionals, 4 doctors located in Tennessee. She is a practice manager, and they have 35 team members, and they are privately owned. Hell. And I don't know if Chris, if you wanted to put yours in, it didn't come up if you there it goes. So Kristen, she purchased the practice with another vet 1.5 years ago. Making a lot of changes and just finishing a big renovation. Ooh, yeah, that's a lot of work. Did y'all try to keep working through it too? Like you kept the practice, oh gosh, you're hardcore. And now you're searching for a manager. And where are y'all located, Chris? Yes, guess I know a manager. In Portland, Maine, nice. I know there are a couple other people on here. I don't know if anybody else wants to go. Wasn't sure who else was of the Granite Peak team versus. Okay, I think that was everybody then. Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for that. It really helps to know like a little bit about your background. Let me get back to our screen. Can you all see it well that way too? Or is it better if I full screen it? Any opinions? Because this is a little bit easier for me to see if I keep it small for me.
Oh, we can see that. I mean, that's fine.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, I take that back because it's not going to do that. There we go. Okay, so just real quick, retention, what really makes people say that's $1 million question, right? Well, I'm going to burst your bubble a little bit and say, damn it, there are no cookie cutter answers. But data does help you look for patterns. That's why we're going to talk a lot about data. It's also unique to your hospital or hospitals. Often, these are just trends that I've seen both like in the AHA study as well as in my own personal experience. People really want to feel like they're, number one, a part of the team. They want to feel appreciated. They need to be adequately compensated, and they need to have a pathway for growth. Those are just some of the main takeaways I see commonly, but it's not always the case in every hospital. So your turn, I want to ask you all these few questions. What retention strategies have you already tried? Of those, what has worked and what hasn't worked? This can be both stuff that you have tried implementing, or perhaps you've been in a clinic and things have been implemented. You've experienced, like you were not directly leading the implementation, but just along for the ride. So either experiencing as a leader or as part of a team, what have you seen that actually worked? What do you think has not worked? And then lastly, why do you think cookie cutter solutions often fail? So I'll just kind of toss all those out there. You can answer one or all. I'd like to just kind of open the conversation for what you all have seen in vet med when it comes to retention efforts. What are you noticing?
I'll just go ahead and throw out pizza, right? That's our number one retention tool.
And how well does it work?
I mean, people get a little grumpy. It's not the Band-Aid that we need it to be.
I have heard repeatedly when I come into hospitals to do interviews, if they throw another effing pizza party, I'm like, oh, tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, no.
You always see some nods. Okay, so would you say a cookie cutter solution of, great job, guys, here's a pizza party, is not a winner?
No. Put that in the not column.
Okay. Why do you all think that is? Why does that not work?
I think it's not thoughtful, right? It's not, it serves an immediate need. It's not specific to your crew, and it's not very thoughtful. It's a quick, easy fix.
Yeah.
I was going to use the word fix. It seems like you just want to do the bare minimum to try to get us through one more week, because I know that's what feels here.
Yeah. So true. Good observation. What else have you all tried that worked or didn't work?
I set a goal for my staff on selling flea and tick and heartworm prevention. And if they met it, I told them I would give them up to a $6,000 budget to go somewhere. And I honestly don't think it worked that well.
Damn.
You know, I probably had about a 50% response rate from employees when, you know, we were narrowing down what the final decision of where to go was.
How'd that make you
So-
feel?
I felt kind of like, you know, I'm offering you this free trip, which I think is pretty nice. And people don't even have the decency to respond.
Is it because you think they wanted cash?
I don't know, maybe. It's quite possibly, like, I did think about just returning to that and being like, just splitting the cost of that. But there's some people that are very excited about going somewhere.
Right. It's so hard, isn't it? That's where it's like, how do you please everybody?
Right. So I think the part of the answer to your last question is it depends who the person is and how they feel appreciated and what, you know, what is praise for them.
100%. You're nailing it. Yes. What else? Okay. Oh, we got one here. Let's see. From Chris. She said, trying to encourage areas of interest, enrolled 3 staff members in low stress handling and need to implement what they have learned to bring it to the rest of the team and patients. Disappointed, only 3 takers out of 12 offered to carve out time at work, time to work at home and paid time. Yeah, see, that's what's, I think probably across the board, we can all feel this pain of like, as leaders, you're trying to like read people's minds and offer them things you think they're going to like. And you put it out there. It's kind of like, I made you this special little pie. And they're like, 2 people like, well, that's fine. And you're like, oh, you know, you're really trying, but sometimes there's a flop. And then as leaders, it leads us to feel really like jaded and exhausted. You know, how do we keep up this effort if we're not really seeing the engagement and the responsiveness from the team, right? There has to be some synergy to make this wheel turn. Yeah. Have you ever experienced something where you were a part of a team and they did something that was kind of retention focused and you liked it? Bingo. Right? Think about this. Like, how do we actually know how to do this if we've never seen it work? If somebody said, hey, perform this surgery you've never done, go do it. You'd be like, I should probably shadow you first. You know, we learn by experiencing things. We learn by observing. And most of us have, I mean, if you're like me, you came from some pretty dark environments. We're like, all I know is what not to do. So we're opening up the can of worms here. Appreciate you all sharing some of your experiences. Was there anybody else that wanted to go? Even Granite Peak, I mean, you guys can share it. It's not like it's just vet med. This is work. So if you have anything you want to share.
I have one that I thought worked. It took some tweaking. We implemented a PTO program. And when we did, I mean, I think a lot of people have it, but as we were putting ours together, we ran into some snags at the beginning where people would build up a lot of PTO, and then you would see them kind of drain their PTO right before they left the company. And we had that happen a couple times. And as we've retooled that and made kind of some parameters of how we use our PTO, I think it's helped because it's a good program where the employees are getting a lot, and that the way that we've set it up, it makes them use their PTO on a regular basis and not accrue too much, which is vital to them not getting burnt out at this location.
I love that. Because who here, raise your hand if I was like this, I will rest when I'm dead. I don't need PTO, right? And I'll take you take like a 6-month vacation because you're so burned out. And it's so unhealthy. The pendulum is swinging back and forth. So it's kind of like your PTO is also a wellness benefit, like a strategy to promote wellness. Smart. Hopefully we can steal ideas from each other too. Mastermind. Cool. All right, guys. So I'll go back to the screen.
So I have a question. How do you make them use it then? Can you tell us more about the?
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is that you can only use so much PTO at one given time. So if you want to take, 90 hours of PTO, there's just a limit on what you can take, and this prevents the employees from draining their PTO all at one time. And that when I set up the new parameters, I let them know that this program is designed to help you guys decompress and to use some time throughout the month or throughout the quarter or whatever it is. And that's what it's for. That's why we're putting together this program with a high rate PTO program. Then we also we have a point where you lose your PTO. So if you don't use it, you lose it. So you are really forced to use your PTO along the way. And I know that really constricts what employees can do, but we try to make sure that people can take a good sized vacation or whatever else and just take a day when they need it. And while it does put them in a box as far as how they can use it, it works out better for the company. I don't want to say getting burnt, but certainly having some issues at the end of employment or just people getting burnout in general.
Man, I love that, Steve. Oh, I'm glad this is being recorded too. So it's like fun to go back and like listen to these details and borrow some. I'll just read real quick from Emily and Chris, because then we'll have to move on and make sure we stay on time. Emily said, for me, I think we have to start making sure that we have the right people on the bus. With time, weeding out employees who are fighting against our core values and standards of care will basically fix your retention issues. I know that's super summed up. It's just the tip of the iceberg, right? But the tip is a good place to start. We did this a while back and it made a world of difference, but everyone on the admin and management team had to be on the same page. Totally true. That's alignment. And then Chris asked, how much time off do you give your new employees? And I'll just have Steve, if you can just answer that in the chat, feel free, and then I'll go ahead and get on with the presentation. But great points you all are making. That's excellent. My screen is weird. Sorry, guys. There we go. All right, so I'll go a little bit quicker through a few of these. So we've already done this part. So let's go through the industry data. Now, these next few bits, all this will be on that downloadable. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time because you're going to want to just get super nerdy and go look at this yourself. It's a great study. AHA did this study called the Please Stay study. Previous to this, I used to use like a lot of data from the AVMA, but I think this is more, it's new. And I think that it's really in alignment with what I've been seeing in clinics, boots on the ground too. So they had the stat that 30% of veterinary practice team members and 34% of DVMs are planning on leaving their current role, which gives us all the shivers. Estimated total expense of losing one employee can equate to 1.5 to 2 times the employee's salary. Ugh. And then data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Occupational Outlook Handbook projects a 20% increase in veterinary jobs between 2022 and 32, classifying growth in the profession as much faster than average. So we all know this. It'll be impossible to meet that growth of demand with our current rate of personnel losses. We all are feeling this. We know that we're not graduating enough DVMs to keep up demand, and technicians for hire are very scarce. So retention is really more important than ever. So AHA's finding this first figure here is really about what drives retention. Personally, I just like to look at the first 30%. So we have teamwork, modern medicine, meaningful work, and fair compensation. And then the next graph shows you what drives attrition. So what makes people want to leave. Top few are compensation. If you're not paying them adequately, they're definitely going to leave. If they don't feel appreciated, and if they don't have a pathway for career development, and if they don't feel like they're a part of a team. So we see some overlap there. They next have this kind of cool matrix chart where they kind of put all the stuff on the matrix together. So you can kind of like look at that chart and see what on the green side drives that retention, makes people want to stay. And then on the other side of the chart, the gray, the drivers of attrition. Just gives you a nice visual snapshot. But my favorite part as a nerdy therapist is this. So many of you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we use as therapists to say, you have to meet the needs at the bottom of the pyramid first. And because those are foundational, it's kind of like oxygen. Whereas the stuff at the top of the pyramid might be like hugs and kisses. If you had a kid, what does the kid need more? Oxygen or hugs and kisses? Oxygen first, right? It's a hierarchy of needs. So basically, AHA took this data and built it into a hierarchy of needs for veterinary teams based on what they're seeing. So at the very bottom of that base of the pyramid, you got to compensate them fairly. We all know that. But then above that, look at what's number 2. I love this. Appreciation. That's free almost. Like we can show appreciation without having to spend money. Pathways for career development and caring leadership. So those are some very, very central things. Then we get up into the middle zone, which is staff as a team, that team feeling, well-being support, and job flexibility, because we know we have, a lot of family-centric people in vet med. And at the very top, like the icing on the cake, would be modern medicine and meaningful work. Again, all those will be saved for you on that downloadable at the end. So let's talk about your clinic and how to collect and deepen your data. So common ways to collect data. Number 1, we often use your practice management software to generate reports, or you can calculate it manually if you're that nerdy and you want to do it, go for it. That's the equation, very basic. The benchmark is what you want to aim for is 23% turnover. I want to give you all, well, actually, does anybody here know their number, what they're at right now in terms of turnover? Anybody looked at it recently? Oftentimes, we aren't really checking these things, right? But it is really, really good information to know. Anyway, so if you have practice management software, you should be able to find it in there, like HR software. I'm going to give you all, again, more information on how you can find that. You can always message me. I wanted to share one of our recent clinics that we worked with was a series of 13 hospitals through a region. When I met them, their turnover was 35-ish%. After just 6 months of applied effort. Like essentially when we come in, what I'm saying is I'm going to take that part of your pie chart and own it like a pit bull. I'm going to be all over your retention and organizing the team of what we need to do to drive this number down. That's all we want to do. So this is one of our big success stories because we were working against a very toxic culture, like sexual harassment and all sorts of things. Like it was dark. And I came in thinking, oh God, I don't know if we can pull this off. Like this looks really messy. But when I started interviewing the team, they were so ready. Like they were drooling, like ready to make changes. And even if you have a few individuals in a company that are labeled as toxic, if you have enough people, like massive numbers that want to make things better, they will win, and they've won. So this was super duper fun. A really, really good example of how even across larger regions, if you have a few really strong leaders that can help organize and implement, you can really move mountains. So next I want to talk about deepening your data, because what a lot of people do is they'll just look at, like, they'll pull up their software, they'll run a retention report, and they'll be like, okay, here are the numbers. This is the percentage like veterinarians that have turned over, technicians, the overall, over a year-long period or 6-month period or 5-year period. They kind of just look at the number and try to make assumptions. Instead, what I'd rather have people do is take the data that you have from your practice management software and then do more. So 1, you could be conducting exit interviews, which is the best practice anyway. If you can do it, you ought to be doing it and managing that well. And it should be standardized. So you can like put it into a spreadsheet and bring out numerical data. You can also conduct anonymous surveys like ENPS surveys, which are net promoter scores. There are a bunch of different types of surveys you can do. You might want to pick one that you feel gets the most relevant information for you, for your team. And then let them know these are anonymous. Like nobody's going to know who said what, but we really want to know what you think. So usually when I come into a hospital, I will have asked that they've already done this part, or I can help them set it up. Because I like to look at survey data and then I get a lot of questions like, ooh, the survey data will point you in directions like where there's smoke, there might be fire. And then you can follow that up with confidential interviews. So I like coming in and saying, we're going to select like 20 of your team members, and I'm going to sit down with them one-on-one 30 minutes and do a confidential interview. And then I put everything into a report. Nobody's name is mentioned, but then you really see the specifics. Because if you can find trends in your survey data, then you can go deeper with those questions that are very targeted. I would also say if you are doing interviews, one error that I see made all the time in the interview process is we allow it to turn into a bitch fest where people are just complaining. You're not going to get anywhere with that. So I always segmented it into 50% complain. I want to hear your complaints. 50% solution creation. All these complaints you have, tell me how you would fix it. If I gave you the magic wand, right? And you had all the power and it's all on you to do it. how would you do it? Because I want them to have ideas of how can I be a part of the change? I don't want to just look up there and say, please, leadership, please help me. No, you can actually be a part of that change. I want you to feel buy-in. I want you to feel ownership. So make sure if you're conducting interviews, they are done in a way that truly elicits deep, true responses, because people sometimes don't want to tell you if they're kind of apprehensive, and elicits the solutions they really want to be bought into. So we don't end up like Kathleen, for instance, where, you think, then you offer this really generous thing, but it wasn't what they were really looking for. It can just save you a lot of time and money. So yes, why is deepening your data important? Saves time and money. By getting to the root issues, by soliciting solutions the team really wants to be a part of implementing, by increasing the sense of care, attention, and focus team members perceive from leadership. Like I've had people say to me after interviews, it's so obvious they must really care about us if they paid you to come here. I'm like, it's true. They care a lot, because people get this feeling with leadership of like, they don't really care. And I'm often there to debunk that. They care so much. They just can't read your mind. We have to use our words to tell them. So that is a huge one, is the optics of how they feel about leadership. And that really helps you organize plans based on the perceptions of what is most severe according to your team, because you might have a really different perception of what you think is important. Any questions there? And I'd say, Jessica or Megan, if you see comments popping up, because I can't see the comments feed, feel free to just interrupt me and bring those in. Okay. Now let's talk about the traps. Ooh, common traps when addressing turnover. 1, ignoring root issues. By the way, as I go through this list, I'd like for you all to notice which numbers have you possibly experienced or fallen into. Taking a reactive approach and or using cookie cutter or top-down solutions. I've done that for sure. Overemphasis on compensation. It helps, but it's not enough. Damn it. Neglecting employee or career development. Lack of feedback pathways and responsiveness. Inconsistent leadership and follow through. This happens all the time in busy clinics, right? You have the best intentions, but when you have 14 things on your plate and then you add 12 more, something falls off. Failure to show appreciation, recognition, and reward. Again, we're very busy. Neglecting the culture. It's kind of like a garden that you just forgot about and there are a bunch of weeds in it now. Failing to create a positive, inspiring narrative around change. This one is huge. And I know it's so commonly neglected of what I see in companies where they're going to roll out a change, but they don't make a story around it. It just happens. And people are like, oh, what is this change? And they get scared, even though it's a positive change. People don't like change initially, even if it's good, generally speaking. Failing to involve team members in the planning and execution of retention plans. Big no-no. Lacking follow through and getting distracted. Over promising and under delivering. You got to flip that. Under promise and over deliver is better. Lack of proper delegation and project management. And finally, assuming quiet or lack of complaints means everything is okay. No. When I work with teams that aren't talking, I'm like, you should be very worried. Very. You want them to talk. So we need to get that openness going again through the proper channels. We don't want them gossiping, but we do want them to have a voice. So can I just pause there and ask you all to maybe call out what numbers have you possibly experienced or traps that you've fallen into?
I will say that one of the biggest challenges is asking the questions and getting the feedback and then not doing anything with it. Yeah. And then you're like compounding the disrespect of like, why did you ask me if you don't care? So I think that that's a common one that don't ask until you're ready to deliver.
Exactly. It will piss your team off. If you ask and they tell you and then you do nothing, that is extremely painful. And they will then get resentful and stop talking to you. Yeah. Yes. Great one, Megan. Who else? What else have you all experienced? Have you all never fallen into any of the traps? I'm amazed.
I've pretty much fallen into every single one of these traps, but I want to talk about the last one, which is lack of complaints. And I think that, it's a very fine line between trying to keep everyone working towards their goal, but also receiving the information that you need. And I think that when I first came here, it was more of, well, we're moving along, we're making money, everything's okay, we're just leaving it there. It took me some time to embrace, our assistants having their own little staff meeting and talking among themselves and then coming up with things and then bringing them. I just know that I looked at it as, why are we all sitting in a room for 45 minutes talking about whatever, when I really needed to be encouraging that maybe at a shorter time frame, and then receiving that information, and then, like you said, doing something with it and not sitting on it.
I love that. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? Yeah, I'll just say, Steve, with the one you mentioned, I can completely sympathize. Like, as a leader, I tend to move very fast, often too fast, and I just don't like inefficient things. And I especially hate inefficient meetings and just talking in circles. I want to just pull my hair out. I think that in becoming a therapist, it helped me learn that side of myself that was like, no, the value of it, and how I think that another part that often helps in clinics is just to have someone who does enjoy that and is good at it, help just Sherpa it. Like, it might not be you or, the owner of a hospital, for instance. You might delegate that to someone who loves it, and then they can just report to you. But I think that as leaders, we often feel like we have to do it all. And that's where these things it gives you the yuck feeling. You're not going to want to do it, but it is really important. Yeah, that's a great example you shared. All right, shall I keep going? Thumbs up to keep going.
I got one I can share. So at Granite Peak, I haven't done this at other firms that I've worked for, but at Granite Peak, once a week, we have a weekly team meeting. And, we got an agenda before the meeting and we go through some productive things, but the first 5 or 10 minutes is always spent just having people share their personal peak of the week and the professional peak of the week. And I don't know, just building off of Steve's point about that meeting, there's some like funny dialogue that goes on. No one knows what's going to be said. And it's usually a peak of my week as an employee. So I think that's something that on the surface, sharing a peak of the week sounds a little corny, but it's actually kind of fun. And I think it lightens up the mood among employees.
Oh, that is such a good share. It reminds me, I'm gonna piggyback off you, Alec, to say, this is probably maybe about 2 months ago. I just started working with the team on the East Coast, and they asked me to come in and join their shift lead meeting, right? And I got up at 4:30 in the morning because I'm West Coast, to join their 7:30 in the morning shift lead meeting. I get on there. Every single person has their cameras off except for the hospital administrator who's leading it, and nobody is participating. So she's just like running through this agenda, and I'm like, 5 minutes in, I'm sorry, but can I hijack your meeting? And they're like, okay. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? What is going on in this meeting? I'm astounded, right? Like, do you all, like, we don't turn our cameras on. I'm just staring at little circles with a CS in it. Nobody's talking. Like, is this normal for your all's meetings? How's it feel? Do you like it? And so by applying that pressure and opening the dialogue around, like, what would make a meeting rock? What would make it be like 7:30? I can't wait to go to this meeting. Like, I'm going to learn some cool shit. It's going to be fun. Like, what would it take to make a meeting not suck? And then we started trying to build meetings that way. Shorter meetings, fun icebreakers, agenda, start on time, end on time, participation. Like, don't just talk at people. And so I actually took a screenshot recently of one of our recent meetings. Everybody has their cameras on. Somebody's laughing. Somebody's eating something. There's animals in the picture. Babies are crying in the background. And it's like real life. But it takes calling out the elephant in the room of like that disengagement, because it is scary. And it feels bad to be in a meeting like that versus a peak week thing, like Alex said. Right? Night and day. Brilliant, Alec. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Oh, I love a good meeting. All right, so let's go through now. Why does using only top-down solutions often fail? Well, it really creates a lack of buy-in or engagement. Plus, we naturally have resistance to change. Even if somebody tells me to do something good for me, like, hey, Crystal, you should really go eat something. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. I'm starving, but don't tell me what to do. We have a resistance when people kind of like boss us around, and top-down solutions, even when they're good solutions, can bring out that inner resistance. Also, there's a limited perspective. Those of us in leadership, we might not be boots on the ground every day. We might not know what it's like to be a vet assist or in reception. So we're sometimes missing some of the main pain points that they're experiencing. It also decreases innovation. Like, you all know how cool it is when you get a bunch of people in the room, they're on the floor and they start talking about solutions. You're like, I would never have thought of that. That is brilliant. So it also really slows down implementation when it's all on your shoulders to get that solution, implemented throughout the hospital. Oh my gosh, it can be so slow. So if we can build it more bottom up meets top down, we can speed up that timeline. It can also be misaligned with what on the floor team members truly need, which just kind of goes back to limited perspective. There can be big communication gaps, and they can become over reliant on leadership, like always looking to you all to solve all the problems rather than taking some initiative themselves. And there can be a real potential for conflict and blame. The solution doesn't go well, it's on you. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. This whole section, a lot of checklist stuff, is all going to be on the PDF. This is basically what I use and do when I come into hospitals. This is my kind of checklist. It's fluid depending on the hospital. I customize everything that we do, but these are kind of like the basic overarching structures of how we at Full Circle Lab come in to overhaul the retention efforts within a hospital. Data collection, data analysis, initiative design, implementation, tracking progress, and finally, pivoting and maintenance I put together because we're always doing the dance. So the first steps are our action planning are data collection and analysis. So I'm just going to kind of open these up real quick so you can see them here. So I always like to start with, what kind of data do you want to collect? Nail that down for your company based on your budget, how much time you have, what you can actually get done reasonably, and then launch it. So usually when I come in, I'll look at the software data right off the bat. If they have any EMPS data, I'll look at that too. If they have exit interviews, great. If not, no worries. Stay interviews, same thing. And then we'll just schedule a time to come in and do the confidential interviews. You, as a leadership team, you need to craft your message about this. Like, hey, we're going to be conducting these interviews, or we're going to send out a survey. Here's why. What's the why behind what you're doing? That you really want them to be a part of that solution, and you're really hopeful that they're going to speak truthfully and share their ideas with you. Then announce those plans. So sometimes I'll help people create that messaging and think through how's it going to land with your team. And then you launch them, have a firm due date, you stick to it, you get it done. Then we're going to analyze that data. So you want to decide on how you want to analyze it. Like the stuff you're pulling from your software, there are a lot of different ways you can select different toggles within your software. So you need to see what's relevant to you. Like if you went through a major crisis at some point, that data point might not be as representative of your true retention data as maybe a longer timeline. Or maybe you just want to look at roles like, damn, we can't keep veterinarians to save our life. Techs are great, or vice versa. We might want to look at trends in different roles. Then we're looking for patterns over time. So when I'm doing the interviews, I'm looking for patterns. When I'm looking at your surveys, we're looking for patterns and formulating questions to really deepen that data. I all the time have to resist the urge to jump to conclusions and ask leadership to do the same, because you've been with your team a long time. You're going to feel like you know the answers, but sometimes you'll be surprised when you really investigate further. There might be more layers to that onion than you originally suspected. Okay. Oh, and take steps to investigate those questions deeply. And if you are like interviewing and having some questions and it leads to more questions, take the time to investigate them. You can't shortcut this part of it. It is extremely valuable. It allows your team to know you really get them. Now we're going to move into the initiative design phase. So when I'm pulling all this data together and I'm organizing it, I usually will have anywhere from 4 to 7 initiatives in mind, right? Like we need to overhaul your PTO. We need to look at your benefits packages. We need to talk about your schedule and how we arrange schedules. We need to look at your onboarding process. It sounds like it's painful. We need to check out the wellness and implementation and cultural, blah, blah, blah. Like there are so many different factors that rise up that can be like, but we want to prioritize the 2 biggest things that rose to the surface, the core root issues, because sometimes when you take care of those 2, there's a ripple effect that takes care of the rest in many ways. And it prevents us from getting scattered and being ineffective. So you have to resist the urge to do too much, narrow it down to your top 2, or better yet, even 1 initiative at a time, okay? Lay out a flexible timeline, because as we know in vet med, things never go according to plan because we work with live animals and live humans. Identify the people and resources involved in each initiative. So that's really important. I think that was kind of mentioned earlier, like you want to make sure you have team players that really want to play, right? So who are those people that are going to be a part of these initiatives? You're going to invite to be a part of the process. Write down very specific goals. So SMART goals, who's heard of SMART goals, right? Get clear on the goals you have for your initiative. What are you really looking to achieve that helps keep you laser focused? And then you need to identify your performance metrics. You know, how are you going to know if this is even working? We're going to go back to your data and pull another retention survey. We're going to do surveys, data. What are you looking for in how you know your team is progressing? Is it revenue? Is it fewer PTO days taken or sick days taken? Is it number of pets you're able to process in a day? Like, what is it that lets you know you're succeeding? And then you really want to go ahead and identify what barriers you think you're going to face. Like, we're coming into the busy season or the holidays, or you know something's happening, or one of the owners is pregnant and they're going to be out for a few months, so it's going to be down one important person. Get those things as part of your roadmap and your timeline. And then, very important, is craft your narrative about how you're going to roll this out to your team. And then you review the structure for each initiative, but make sure it's realistic, and hit go. Should I pause there? Does anybody have a question? Keep going. Okay, keep going. Now we're getting into rubber meets the road implementation. So you're going to announce your plans to the team. You might need to do this in more than one way, because if you're like my people, we don't read emails anymore. I don't know what's going on with that. So we do Slack, we do Teams, we do smoke signals to make sure everybody knows this is happening. Make sure you're setting aside time to really effectively implement this. It always takes more time than you think. I think this is why many companies bring in somebody external like our team, that we can help own it and take stuff off your plate. If you're like, my pie chart's really full, I can give like 1% to this. Well, then make sure you have the right people in positions that can really own it and carry it forward, because it does take time and energy. Invite those members, go ahead and send that email out or Slack message or Teams message, get them involved. And then really be sure that you clarify the structures around how this is going to work. Like, do you need to like create teams? Like, we're going to create a culture team. We're going to create a, pull together the technicians. We have major issues with the tech teams. We're going to have tech team meetings now until we iron this stuff out. Think about how these meetings are going to be run so they're really effective, really engaging, and you're really getting stuff done. In every meeting, you should be moving forward. Kind of just said that. You can ask for feedback on the meetings too. Are these things working for you all? Do you feel like these meetings are effective? And then just quickly address any snags. You will have plenty of snags, things that were unforeseen, that just didn't work. Talk about that. Oftentimes when I'm coming into companies, we find like communication pathway issues that as you're trying to really build and grow, things start to fall apart. So and then talk to the team, well, how can we make these pathways more effective? Where do we need to store things? Is it in OneNote? Like, how are we keeping track of our new SOPs? How is that communicated? What about the training binder? Is it really working? So trying to make sure that our communication is really streamlined through this process. And then we want to start tracking progress. So think about the interval of time of what we're actually tracking. Choose the metrics you're tracking and the methods, and just put it on your calendar. I usually put 2 reminders for myself, like launch it on the 15th, reminder is on the 10th. Okay, so I have that stuff ready to go, and then do it. And then pivoting and maintenance. Flexibility is so key in veterinary medicine. I know I'm preaching to the choir. Be open to your team's feedback and collaboration, and continuously include external factors like economic changes. If you have expansion plans, like one of you does, in your ongoing maintenance to your retention efforts. Just, you're always being nimble. It's like you're kind of like a boxer. You're always like light on your toes. And then make tending to your retention a priority. I really think about like a garden. Like, if I let my garden go, oh my gosh, just like a few weeks, I regret it immensely because it just becomes a wild mess. But if you're out there every day, just pulling a couple weeds, doing a little snip, snip, it stays really nice and it takes less effort over time. And finally, this is a favorite one. Celebrate your progress, guys. Like, when you notice something is working and you hear a little bit of positive feedback, I'm constantly emailing my leaders and being like, hey guys, I just got this message from your training leader. This is what she said. And I'm like, boom, she did so happy, blah, blah, blah. You have to like feel that encouragement for yourself too, like patting each other on the back and giving that encouragement back to your team for all the little wins along the way. It really keeps that momentum going. I just can't get enough of that. So cute. All right. So takeaways here, then we'll kind of open it up. I want to hear from you. What are your key takeaways? Just what's stuck for you today? And don't worry about flattering me. I don't, all this is going to be saved for you. So you can go back and remember it. It might've been, you remember somebody's story, like something that Steve said today or something from Megan. So right now, I'm going to put you on the spot in a second. Think about yours. What is your top 1 or 2 takeaways from today? And remember, retention solutions are as unique as your hospital. You got to deepen your data, investigate. It's worth it. Avoid those traps. You have the list now, so make sure you're not falling into them. And use this action plan. I'm giving it to you to take. I'm sure there are many things you can add to it. It is a bare bones checklist just to have your mind around the overall large structure of what you need to do. But something like this is a template to just help you make sure you're on track. And then here's where you can get the downloadable if you want to scan that. On the downloadable, it has my Calendly link. If you want to schedule a call just to touch base and chat about some of the things you're seeing in your hospital or get more resources, schedule that on Calendly. It's a Zoom. We'll schedule a Zoom call. You'll also have the link to the AHA study there, so you can dive deep on that one. And then it has the whole checklist that we just went through today. Cool. And I'll put this here too. This is my contact information in case you need it. And I'm going to unshare and ask you all, what are your top takeaways? We'll just do it in a couple minutes because then I know Megan's going to wrap up this meeting with a few announcements.
I feel like I've been going first, so I'll go first on this one too. We have a monthly staff meeting coming up on Thursday, and that I find that during our staff meeting, we can get rolling over policy one after another and issues and this and that, and it really bogs down the meeting. And you can tell, looking at everyone's face, they would probably like to contribute. They probably like me to be a little bit, say a little less. And so I'm really going to implement asking some questions to the staff right there where we can address them as a group. Like everyone can, short story, but we can get it out there. And then breaking up our meeting to try to include more of everybody else. I think just as a general thing, what I got from this is that I need to hear more from the staff, and that we're going to start it off with, we're going to do Sierra's peak of the week, and we're going to go with that. So thank you, Alec, for putting that up, and a couple other pauses in our meeting where we can add company feedback.
I love that. Oh, score. What else?
I really like the pyramid, but I think maybe we should encourage us to, as we're going through this, to create our own practices pyramid. Because we can ask the same questions of our team and then find out what's important to them so that we're not going off of someone's information or just assuming, I think that like even just figuring out people's love language goes so far.
Yeah.
Because
I
what
love
do
that
you
so
need?
much, right? Like a personalized pyramid. Ah. Anybody else?
Just think more surveys and more input from everyone.
Yes, exactly. And and then giving yourself permission to like figure out how you want to use that survey information, because it's really hard when you guys are the ones running a clinic. You are down there on the ground. You have administrative duties, you have medicine duties, right? It's a lot. The team will have compassion around that. If we just let them know, we hear you, we want to create this together. We are all short on time. Let's make the plan really realistic. It might take longer than we hope, but at least we're working on it, It's hard.
So Chris typed in that she likes the idea of anonymous surveys because she feels like they don't get honest answers in person or at staff meetings with the few strong introverts versus extroverts. So that's good. Personally, I've done this before, and you have to reiterate time and time again that it is anonymous, that there is no tracking an IP address, that there's no way to like circle back and figure out who it is, because the staff is a little untrusting when you're like, just give it to me. I want to know it all. So
Megan, I'm going to piggyback on that. So that group I talked about, the 13 regional, they were completely suspicious. So when I read their surveys, they weren't being forthcoming. So when I came in to do the interviews, I'm a completely neutral third party. I'm also a therapist. Confidentiality is the core of my being. I mean, I think that was where they finally were, and that's where I learned about all the really dark stuff, like the sexual harassment that nobody had put in a survey, obviously. And that was, and that also happened, the one I mentioned that had the really dark meetings where nobody was participating. It was similar when we conducted a survey. I helped them create it. And as I was reading the data, I could tell they were very superficial answers, short answers with a couple people that write paragraphs, but they were like 2 on the whole team. And so when I actually showed up there in person, it's just a whole different thing if you have somebody they're sitting with and they can feel the feeling of safety. And it might just take a few rounds, like after a few rounds, but they are suspicious. Like Megan said, they think you're going to find some way to track them, which is really unfortunate.
And then also, Steve, Chris, as a reminder, wanted to know how much time you give new employees for PTO.
Oh, that's for Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to work out your PTO on what works for your financial situation. But what I do is everyone, when they come in, they immediately start earning PTO. From the first day of work, they start earning PTO. They cannot use PTO for their first 60 days. It's like they're, so they cannot use anything that they earn over that time, but they start accruing it immediately. And then based on your time in the company, you accrue at a different rate. So that, it's like a incentive to my people that have been here for 5 years. They accrue at a faster. Now, what your rate is really depends on you, and I've had to work mine several different times to find out what actually works for me. But you find a percentage, a small decimal of hours worked, and so if you work 1 hour, you get 0.017 hours of accrual, or however that goes. And it's very specific to each practice. I tried to cookie cutter one off of a friend of mine, and it was not successful. So take your time in figuring out what your math is.
Oh, good one. And by the way, somebody asked in the survey that I sent out, thank you all for completing that survey. You would love tips on calculating, conveying to my team their total compensation. So on the downloadable at the very bottom, I linked up, I was just searching online to see if I found any good resources. And this is not specific to veterinary medicine, but it was a really thorough article on how to calculate employee benefits. It kind of includes everything that you might even possibly consider a benefit that you wouldn't normally think of, and how to put like a number to that. So the package is like, this is actually a really nice package. It's not just your PTO and your salary. There's much more that goes into that package, so you can show more value. So for that person who is requesting that, that's at the end of the downloadable guide when you do that little QR code. And should I put that QR code up one more time? Does anybody need that? I'll just do that right now.
And then I'll go ahead and wrap things up. So
Yeah,
thank you so much, Crystal. I think you're so down to earth and really understand the industry. So your knowledge and insight today were definitely invaluable. I've got some action items. I hope we all go away with some action items. And don't forget, if you need the CE certificate for today, you just need to email your name to events@granitepeakcpa.com. And then Caroline can send you out your CE certificate. Next month, same time, same place, Wednesday, August 7th at 12 Eastern. Aaron Rooney will dive into vendor contract negotiations, which I think we all struggle with as well. And then don't forget to follow us on Facebook if you want more information and stay up to the latest what we got's going on. That's it. Crystal, thank you so much.
Fabulous. It was so fun to be here with you all. And I just love how engaged your group is. You got a really fun team here.